Hello, everyone. This is still chapter 2, Respect Who You Are, and this is part 2 of chapter 2. And this section starts with a title, Realigning Ourselves. Learning how to work through and transform what may not be serving us any longer can be tricky. In some cases, the simple identification of the belief and then making a decision to work through it can be enough to shift how we think and feel, and it allows us to become more effective. In a sense, we are providing new and better nutrients to the soil, allowing for healthier plants and behaviors to grow. Often, the simple step of accepting and allowing the feelings will heal this one wounded part, and the negative belief will naturally die off and become fertilizer for our soil. In some cases, it may require more effort. In those cases, gaining further knowledge, prayer, a conference talk, scripture reading, temple attendance, or fasting is required to make a needed shift. These can all be considered the means, in quotes, as mentioned in chapter 1, to plow the soil and fertilize it so healthy plants can grow and bear fruit while choking out the weeds. This heightened state of spiritual awareness supports us in our healing process and will guide us to resolutions. Yet, even after it seems like we have done all we can do, we may still have embedded core beliefs preventing us from making progress. These are stored deep within us, and we sense they no longer serve us, but no matter how hard we try, we can't seem to move past them to make a shift. It can seem like there is a brick wall blocking us and we have no way to break it down. We have to address the root cause of this type of issue. As we get to the weed's root bulb, we can rid ourselves of it for good and make space to plant something more positive. There are also times when these issues have deeply embedded root systems and require layers of healing before we are able to pull all of the root hairs and transform our garden forever. The good news is we all have an innate ability to address even the deepest of wounds. It is important to consider that if you are trying to do work yourself and you feel an increase in discomfort, it may be time to get help with a knowledgeable professional who understands trauma and does sensory work. In rare cases, it may be possible that trying to do it on your own is re-traumatizing you and not healing you. Now that you are more aware, you can evaluate what approach you want to use to address these issues. For me, I have found using a knowledgeable therapist, knowledgeable in ART, which stands for Accelerated Resolution Therapy, and IFS, Internal Family Systems, and sometimes working with a certified EFT practitioner has been the most effective way to eliminate deeply embedded beliefs. There are many other modalities and tools that can support you in this process. Addressing wounds from the past will make us feel whole and allow us to stay focused on our eternal progression. In this chapter, we have focused on addressing past wounds and changing beliefs that are stopping us from respecting and embracing who we truly are. Even after I had gained a testimony of my Heavenly Father specifically telling me in my patriarchal blessing how much He loved me and knew me, I had trouble accepting and owning it until I was able to heal some of those past stories and let go of limiting beliefs. Some of these ideas had come deeply entrenched as part of my worldly identity and overriding the connection to my divine identity. It can be challenging to identify root causes and move through the healing process. Take my experience, for example. As a child and young adult, I had grown increasingly fearful of being belittled and rejected if my mother heard me speak of my love for the gospel. I extrapolated this fear out to everyone in general. I had put blocks up and set this aside to protect me as a child, but I didn't remove those blocks as I became an adult. That fear of rejection caused me to shut down and stay quiet in all kinds of settings. Sometimes mapping things out in the way I have described will take you to a path you would never have guessed. For example, how did forgiveness and allowing love fit into my story about not belonging? First, I think forgiveness can be such a trite word. There is a complexity to forgiveness that runs deep and opens wide like a crevice in a mountain snow. Forgiveness is often given as a piece of advice or an admonishment to people who are suffering, promises of how life will change and magically things will become better if we just forgive. While I understood the sentiment of those statements, thinking about this raises the hair on the back of my neck. Because when I think I need to forgive someone, the implication is a judgment on my part about what someone else has done wrong. Part of me thinks, how dare I be so bold? I don't think there really is ever a place for self-righteous indignation. It is me, not God, saying that they did something wrong or I have been wronged. We are told not to judge, yet we are asked to forgive. It is why I believe the word forgiveness has a much deeper significance related to how we interpret a situation. Take my story, for example. I was angry for a very long time at how my mother had treated me due to a circumstance that was completely out of my control and totally within hers. I resented how she treated me. However, I could also see the ways she had tried to overcome and deal with what she had gone through. I could see how that one act had dramatically changed the course of her life, perhaps even shattered her dreams for her future. I could see how she continued to punish herself clear up until the day she died. I pondered and prayed about how to forgive my mother and eventually realized there was nothing to forgive. I was to extend grace. That is when I fully understood the meaning of forgiveness. Her actions were not mine to judge. I knew my mother loved me. I knew she had done her very best under the circumstances, and the rest was between her and God. My responsibility was to work through the anger and resentment and let it go. My work, then and always, is to decide how others' actions will mold my beliefs, my behavior, and how I view the world and others. I had hardened my heart toward my mom, which in turn had hardened me to fully receiving love or extending trust to not only her, but myself and others. My true work started with the repentance process and asking God's forgiveness in order to soften my heart. This is the kind of healing work we all need to do. It started with recognizing a false belief about not being lovable, but integral to that was my inability to receive love and acceptance, which is such a big part of developing a healthy sense of belonging. One would think receiving love was what I had needed and wanted all along, so why would it be hard to receive? Love felt foreign and very scary to me. Even though I healed those wounds and let go of the anger and resentment, I am still learning to let those walls down. I still have to learn how to replace my negative experiences and my protection with positive experiences and vulnerability, to retrain my brain and heart. This can be more difficult than letting go of the old wounds, but is integral to our healing process. Remember neuroplasticity? We can change and go through transformation. This is necessary for our exaltation. To understand more about how this works, it is helpful to know more about our biology, genes, and epigenetics. My birth story led me to a fascination with the age-old question of nature versus nurture. As I mentioned in the beginning, I wanted to deny that my genes had anything to do with who I was, but deep down I knew better. Or how often do we hear people say, "Oh, I can't do anything about it. It is in my genes." This nagged at me until I discovered the research being done in epigenetics. Epigenetics is how our behavior and environment can cause changes affecting the way our genes fire. This field barely existed when I was born, but today it has exploded into a new field of study in many universities. My favorite way of explaining epigenetics is to think about the human genome as an orchestra, where each instrument is one of our genes and the complete orchestra is the genome. Our behavior and our environment are like the composer that writes the symphony, with our brain as the conductor, telling each instrument how, when, and what note to play. As we compose our symphony, we get to choose which instruments we play and when, for how long, and at what tempo. Depending on the environment and the beliefs we have formulated, the same set of genes can play millions of different musical compositions. This is why identical twins have the same genome but can be so different. I found so much comfort in the idea that my genes do have a role in who I am and how I behave, but it is my environment and the beliefs I formulate that regulate which genes fire and when. We have the responsibility to own our part. I marvel at what magnificent creatures we really are and see God's hand in how we are created. He gave us the amazing gift of biologically being able to shift into handling a crisis, but we are not meant to get stuck in that trauma response. We are also blessed with Christ's atoning power and our own divine abilities. Our beliefs dictate how we interact with others and influence how we feel, even to the level of how disease and illness show up in our bodies. To illustrate how powerful the mind, body, and spirit can be, consider the documented cases where a person with multiple personality disorder, now called identity dissociative disorder, can be physically tested for diabetes in one personality and not in another. There have even been cases where a personality has been documented to have a different eye color. We are truly powerful divine beings. Studies like the ACE, which stands for ACE Adverse Childhood Events, illustrate adverse events and prolonged stress affect us later in life. Adverse events are proven to change the brain and be predictors of greater chronic illness and shorter lifespans of more than 20 years. Some examples of adverse events include parental divorce, death of a parent, neglect, abuse, witnessing a loved one being abused, sudden separation from a loved one, mental health issues with a care provider, etc. Adverse effects are more and more common in children's lives as divorce rates and single-parent families are on the rise. Suicide rates increase and chronic illness is at an all-time high. We have to find ways to let go of past wounds, change our brains, take up our cross, and move forward in faith. As we weed our garden, we need to work the soil through prayer, fertilize with love, nurture our self-esteem, and plant healthier beliefs that support our divine identity. We can reduce illness, increase our longevity, and improve our well-being. This in turn impacts our posterity and quality of life. It is time to take steps to move forward. Retrain your brain. Moving forward will require you to be courageous and step into the discomfort of the unknown. Taking new steps is the only way to develop the means to retrain your brain to come to believe that it's possible to feel safe in unsettling situations and to learn to trust that God will help us fill in the gaps. Remember when Moses was leading the Israelites out of Egypt and toward freedom? There were so many uncertain times where the Israelites fell back into old patterns and even wanted to go back to Egypt and lives of slavery. That was what was familiar to them. Uncertainty, even when moving in a positive direction, is scary. Replacing old patterns with new ones includes many elements. Sometimes we have to learn how to get comfortable with discomfort. In a world where we can easily find a way to distract ourselves, we have become less tolerant of being uncomfortable. I'm not talking about suffering, but just a willingness to be uncomfortable. We'll discuss this more in the next chapter, and sometimes discomfort is not necessary. So before we get to suffering, we can start to take some baby steps to relieve feeling of discomfort and anxiety. First, take some time to get clear on your values. Review a list of possible values and identify what is most important for you. Learning to live in alignment with your values and with God builds self-worth and reduces anxiety. It provides a foundation for you to always return to and anchor yourself in God's love. Committing to what you value and acting according will help you build self-trust. At the end of this chapter, you can find a code pointing you to a PDF with a list of values and instructions to walk you through the process of identifying your top 2 or 3 values. If you are feeling anxious, reflect on your current situation and ask if your actions are in alignment with your values. If they aren't, look for ways to make adjustments to realign yourself. Next, start to pay attention to how you make decisions. What happens when you are in a group or with a friend? Are you in the habit of compromising your values and preferences because you're trying to fit in, or are you staying in alignment? Notice and act on your preferences. Try to break the habit by getting in the practice of asking yourself and others for what you need. If you often tell people it doesn't matter or you can pick when asked to make a choice, instead practice thinking to yourself, well, if it did matter, what would I pick? Make sure you are in tune with your needs, wants, and desires. Practice asking for what you want at least once a day. Then make sure to notice what goes on for you if the request isn't met. Do you personalize it? Do you start to feel insecure or uncomfortable, maybe even angry? This is an opportunity to recognize and acknowledge you are getting your needs met and your validation or your self-worth from someone else rather than from yourself and your connection to God. Use the opportunity to reconnect and build your sense of self-worth by aligning to the knowledge that you are a child of God and His love is limitless for every single one of us. Ask yourself, what can I do to support getting my needs met? Practice and learn to sit with discomfort and build your self-soothing ability. Future chapters will identify additional tools you can use for healthy self-soothing. For now, be willing to sit in this discomfort, then try making a conscious choice to operate from an astounding place of confidence and peace by tuning into who you truly are and how you can fulfill your needs. This is a poem I wrote in high school while I was grappling with finding out about my biological father and trying to come to terms with it all. You will see how I viewed myself, my identity, and how I saw others based on my childhood experience and the decisions I made. Her heart was young, her thoughts naive. She trusted man, unaware of deceit. Her innocence glowed in clear blue eyes. She saw only truth, knew nothing of lies. Her love set free, saving broken hearts. She repaired the damage others tore apart. To her, life was easy. Her secret was sharing. She selflessly gave, man took without caring. Her character stable, her weaknesses fought. She saw people's strengths while others could not. Her feelings were true, her heart was sincere. She joyfully laughed while man just sneered. Her life so sheltered, experiences so small, her heart made of gold, but weren't they all? Her insight soon broadened by loved one's deceit. Man stabs you in the back while kissing your feet. Her insight increased, seeing truths distorted, her eyes clouded over, man's lies fervent, torrid. Her heart now broken, badly needing repair. No one saw her hurt, mankind didn't care. Her life a struggle, not wanting to share. People will only take, they are all so unfair. Her character weak, she fought no longer. Man had few strengths, their weaknesses stronger. Her feelings were mixed, man so insincere. She no longer laughed, man filled her with fear. Her life still sheltered, she climbed in a shell. Her heart was of gold, man's heart made of steel. I lived with these beliefs buried deep in my subconscious for over 30 years. As I said earlier, I lost trust in man, myself, and God. I closed myself off and I focused on pleasing others so I wouldn't get hurt. But in ignoring and stuffing down the pain, I also didn't allow myself the ability to feel true joy, pleasure, or peace. As I continue to heal, I continue to open my heart, learn how to trust, and find strength in my true identity as illustrated in the poem at the end of this chapter. As you support yourself moving through uncomfortable situations, your self-esteem will grow and you'll truly learn to love and respect yourself. Being courageous in this way requires love and patience. The nature of growth is that you will always feel some discomfort. While it is important to be consistent in moving forward, it is also important to love and accept yourself where you are, to free yourself from comparison and basing your progress on what others think is best for you. This work will support you in moving through discomfort faster while at the same time allowing for God's timing so you can let go of your worldly identity and fully embrace the beautiful tapestry of your divine identity and worth. This chapter introduced the following proven tools to use in developing strong self-worth and respect. Use the garden analogy to identify limiting beliefs and ask why at least 5 times. Use modalities necessary to remove root cause issues. Use the values to determine your top values. Use the practice of noticing how you align when interacting with others. Use the practice of asking for what you need and creating your own emotional safety. For additional tips, go to the website using the QR code. And then here's the poem at the end. It's called I Am. I am soft and cuddly like a kitten, yet fiercely strong like a tiger. I am loyal and loving like a golden retriever, yet will fight for what's right like a pit bull. I'm beautiful and fragile like a butterfly. Sometimes I need my cocoon like a caterpillar. Most of the time I soar like an eagle. All right, that's the end of chapter 2. The tools are out on the website, and I'll continue to put meditations. I also want to put some links so that you can take the attachment test to see what kind of attachment you are. We'll be using that in later chapters. And then also the ACE test to see where you are if you have had some adverse effects in your life and see how low you score on that. So I will continue to add links and relevant even conference talks that I think are meaningful for the chapters and continue to build that out. But I hope you found this helpful and hope you have an amazing day.